Om Sthapakaya cha dharmasya sarvadharmaswarupine avatara varishtaya Ramakrishnaya te namaha. O Ramakrishna, the establisher of the eternal religion, the embodiment of all religions, and the best of all the incarnations, we salute thee. In the last reading class, we were reading at para 24 on page 320. Today we shall start the para 25 on the same page 320. Be that as it may, Chaitanya preached the glory of the names of God and taught the aspirant to guide their lives according to the ideal of austere renunciation and place themselves in respect of love in the position of the beloved of Krishna, and thus tried to stem the tide of adultery prevalent in the society at that time. So Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, he introduced this Mathura Bhava for the sadhakas with the idea of inculcating into them the principles of renunciation and selflessness, lacking which, the earlier the spiritual practices had been corrupted and degraded. So he wanted to make it pure. So if selflessness came into their spiritual practices and renunciation came in their life, then they would be pure and they would take the pure course in their spiritual life. That was his idea. That thus tried to stem the tide of adultery. The mode of devotion and instruction to the aspirants did endless good to humanity. It showed the right path to those who went astray, brought into the bounds of a new society those who were excommunicated and who were living outside the pale of caste, embracing them all within a new caste called the devotees of God, Vaishnava. So they are all called Vaishnavas. That means devotees of God, Vaishnava, Vishnu, and held the high and pure ideal of renunciation and detachment before all the communities. The great thing that Chaitanya did was he embraced all the castes, from the lowest caste to the highest, and those who were outside the pale of castes also, who were called untouchables, who were called who were in a way excommunicated by all the four castes. He gave them all position in his new religion, what he called as the lovers of God, devotees of God, Vaishnavism. So it became later on Gaudiya Vaishnavism, Bengal Vaishnavism. It embraced all the castes, all the creeds and colors, and it gave a chance to all the people who were neglected and thought they are impure and they should not be admitted into caste. All got a chance, a respectable place in spiritual life. That great unity among the Hindus of different castes, etc., Chaitanya brought about through the spiritual means. The great reformation. Only a spiritual man like him can do. So he had done it. However, that is not all. He proved beyond doubt that all the mental and physical changes called the 8 Sattvika Vikaras, whose Tamasika counterparts are produced by the love and union of ordinary pairs of lovers, they actually came on the aspirant a pure mind in virtue of the intense meditation and contemplation on the divine husband, the lover of the universe. So, in place of the ordinary love also, people started thinking that we must follow, we must be like a Krishna, we must be like a Radha. So there must be higher morals in our life. Great dedication, selflessness must be there in our love between husband and wife. All those things percolated and made people better. Even their normal lovers became better lovers after Chaitanya Mahaprabhu preached this Madhura Bhava. This converted at that time the Alankara Shastra, the science of rhetoric, into scriptural, spiritual scripture. But poetry about Krishna, bhajans about Krishna, songs about Krishna, they became more or less scriptures, the teachings for spiritual people to follow. It happened because of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. That is why you see Vaishnava Sankirtan. Sankirtan is very famous among the Vaishnavas. What wonderful feelings they have got. They sing, they clap their hands, they stand up and they dance also to enjoy it. So all this happened because of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. And giving the sensual, poetic and dramatic literature the color of spiritual love, made it palatable to spiritual aspirants and conducive to their progress. See, common people wanted something full of interest and emotion. So Chaitanya Mahaprabhu gave the religious teachings through songs, through poetry. So songs and poetry set to tunes and the percussion instruments, they became very popular for common people as well as uncommon people or the gentry. All of them enjoyed it. And even today, so if you hear the Vaishnava Sankirtan, you will be transported. And ordinary people also, they feel something ethereal, something spiritual for the time being. So Chaitanya Mahaprabhu contributed so much to the society and to uplift the common people to a higher level of spiritual life. It thus made the path of discipline easy for them to follow by teaching them to requisition poetry and romance for the purpose of making the divine Lord their very own, and to turn even the baser passions of lust, anger, etc. onto him. Passions that had by all means to be shunned during the practice of Shanta Bhava, the devotional mood of calmness. In the other four modes or moods of bhakti, Shanta, Dasya, Sakya, Vatsalya, you don't have this place for so much of singing and dancing. Whereas here, so he gave chance for so much of poesy to come and make the spiritual life sweeter. So that's why lots of people came into his fold and were benefited. Although in the eyes of modern youths, the Madhura Bhava appears to be unnatural and unbecoming, for those who have male bodies, it does not take long for a Vedantin to ascertain its proper value. Usually, why should man think himself as a woman or a woman as a man? When I say why a woman should think herself as a man, so I keep in mind some experiences I had when I was in the matriarchal societies of the tribals in Khasi and Jaintia Hills, the present Meghalaya. Say it's a matriarchal society. There, women are the masters of house, so they hold all the property, and it is their title that the children take, not the father's title. So, in the matriarchal society, if you ask a girl to take part in a drama as a boy, she will refuse. Just as if you ask a boy in our plains to take a part of a girl in a drama, he says, first he hesitates. No, I don't want to become a girl. Somehow he feels unnatural about it. So he says no. Exactly the same thing the girls there. No, why we are girls? Why should we take the part of a boy? No, it is below our dignity. So they refused. So the idea is, it is difficult to understand how to make a man think that he is a woman, which is unnatural. The other way also, vice versa, it is unnatural. So the author says, for a Vedantin, he can understand it, the value of such attitude. What is that? He knows, that this Vedantin knows that as the result of a very long habit, all thoughts are converted into samskaras. Samskaras be deep-rooted impressions in the mind, in the human mind, and that it is owing to these impressions that man perceives a diverse universe which really is the one non-dual Brahman. So we have a way of thinking, something like a brainwashing from the very beginning, that all the things that are here in this world are really different from one another. They cannot be one. It is all many. So this world is many. It cannot be one homogeneous substance. It cannot be, because we see, with all our senses, so many forms, so many sounds, so many tastes, so many colors, so many smells, so many varieties are there. How can we say it is all one homogeneous substance? But it is all one Brahman only. The truth is, when the spiritual person sees at the highest level of his meditation that everything is one only. It is Brahman alone that it appears as so many, but it is one only. But we are unable to, oddly people are unable to see, because we have been trained from the very beginning. No, this many is true. It is all, everything is different, it's true. So we believe in it in such a strong way. Though it is one, we see it as many, because of the deep impressions in our training, in our upbringing. If we can, the author says, by the grace of God really look upon the universe this very moment as non-existent, it will immediately disappear unto void from before his senses. The author says with an authority, he has attained to that state. He says, if you deny that this world is non-existent, only I am seeing it in a sort of a different type of mind, which has been imbibed with some samskaras, the deep impressions. Due to that impression, I am seeing it as many. But if I see it with a pure mind, without the samskaras, then I would see it as God alone, Brahman alone. So the author says, now itself, if anybody has got that capacity to eradicate all the deep-rooted impressions in the mind, then he can see Brahman alone in everything that is around him. The universe exists for a man only because he thinks it exists. He thinks it exists because he sees it exists. He sees because he thinks, because of samskaras. Earlier, all the while, he has been taught that the world is many, it is true. Many is true. And if Shastras say, but it is only one, or Shastras, whatever it may say, you see, our senses reveal it is many, so believe that it is many. So all of us, we are believing in many because we have been taught. If that samskara, as long as it is there, we will never be able to see one Brahman everywhere. I am a man only because I look upon myself as one, and another is a woman because she regards herself as a woman. Again, it is a matter of daily experience that when one mood becomes predominant in the human mind, it veils and gradually destroys all the other contrary ones. So if a person goes on thinking that I am man, I am man, I am man, so then it will continue. So I am other than man, you can never think. So that means always I think I am a man if I got a male body. And some another person thinks she is a woman. Because of the long-standing samskaras, the deep impressions in our mind. And therefore, an aspirant's effort to veil and gradually destroy all the other moods of his mind by virtue of the prevalence of the Madhura Bhava assumed by him towards God is looked upon by the Vedantin as similar to the effort of removing the thorn in one's foot with another. So it is a great teaching, the author has explained, what the Vedantin is trying to do is, he always goes suggesting to his mind that this world of many is not true. As many it is not true. As one it is true. That means world of many, that many things are there and all of them are true, is not correct. But there may be many, but only we are seeing it as many. At the basis, only one is there. Only that one appears as many. When appears as many, that means apparently it looks many. But intrinsically, basically, it is one subject, one thing only, that is Brahman. So, he goes on reasoning about like this. You see, the Vedas say, the saints and seers say that everything is Brahman alone. Why is it that I am seeing so many forms and so many different things? So if you go on suggesting like this, so I may be wrong, something is wrong in my mind. I am seeing with a colored glass. With a person with a colored glass, he sees everything according to the color of the glass. Suppose you want him to see the real color, you have to remove the glass. Similarly, if you want to see the one in this universe, which is the truth, the colored glass we are wearing of the old samskaras, I am a man, I am a woman, etc., that must be removed. So how to feel that I am not a man when I have been thinking I am a man? So this Madhura Bhava gives an opportunity to think that you are a woman. If you are a man, you think you are a woman. You are a Radha or another Gopika as a lover of Krishna. So when a man begins to think he is a woman, so his samskaras get dwindled, attenuated first of all, then they disappear. So the samskaras of I am a man is destroyed by the thinking that I am a woman, and then the I am a woman also can be left off easily because there is a samskara, deep samskara behind it. By our efforts we are putting it. So if I remove the effort, then this I am a woman also will go. I am a man has gone, it has been destroyed. And I am a woman also goes. Then what am I? I am Brahman. Or one comes to that Advaitic realization through Madhura Bhava. This is how the author is arguing. The consciousness of I am possessed of a body, which is the basis of all other impressions of the human mind, and the firm belief I am a man or woman on account of one's contact with that body, or two samskaras, that is deep ingrained impressions that are most powerful. When the male aspirant is able to forget his male nature by attributing the nature of the husband to the divine Lord and the wife to himself, he, it is needless to say, can very easily throw off as well the mood I am his wife and reach the state beyond all moods. So at the end, when one realizes I am the beloved of Krishna, then he goes beyond that one also. I and Krishna are one. It is the same beloved Supreme God, Brahman, that has appeared as in one form as Krishna, has appeared in another form as Radha, another form as the Gopikas. So we are all one only. That step is very easy. We are going almost to the doorsill of that Advaitic knowledge. Therefore, a Vedantin finds it quite reasonable that an aspirant, when perfect in the discipline of Madhura Bhava, should arrive very near the plane transcending all moods. That is, he is at the doorsill of Advaita. First of all, he is a man. By thinking always, I am a woman, I am a lover, all the way leading a very pure life, a life of detachment and renunciation and ecstatic love for Krishna. So he is leading a highly moral life. At the same time, he is eradicating the samskara that is in his mind of man by imputing himself, his mood, imputing all the qualities of a woman on himself. Then, afterwards, when he comes to almost the last stage, when he completely forget that he is a man, he is a woman, and this woman is an assumed attitude, then not naturally his love for Krishna makes him get united with Krishna spiritually, and he attains to the Advaitic state. Afterwards, he finds that he is neither man nor woman. He is the spirit, and all the man and woman, etc., are connected with only bodies. So, which has nothing to do with the spirit. Body is a matter, and spirit is living being, consciousness. So, consciousness and matter can never be together, just like oil and water. You keep them for 1,000 years, they cannot mix one another. Or light and shade, light and darkness cannot live together. If darkness you want, there cannot be light. If you want light, there can be no darkness. So this is how the Advaitins say. So there is no question of the compromise with the matter and the spirit. Once we realize we are the spirit, we realize we are beyond body. We are neither man nor woman. That is the nature of all the Paramahamsas. All the Paramahamsas of the past, like Shuka, and the Paramahamsas of our age also, like Sri Ramakrishna, Swami Vivekananda, Bhaskarananda, so many other Paramahamsas. They are all beyond the body consciousness. They never thought they are man or woman. They thought they are spirits. They are children of God. They are lights, rays from one sun, that is God. So they never thought in terms of the maleness or womanness. The ultimate aim of practicing the Madhura Bhava is the sum of the aspirant, it may be asked, the realization of the devotional mood of Radha. Although the Vaishnava teaches, it may be said in reply, deny to begin with and say that the mood of the only friend of Radha is attainable and that her own is not. It is inferred that the latter is the ultimate aim of the aspirant. For the difference between the mood of Radha and that of other friends is one of degree and not of kind. Like Radha, her friends also worship Krishna, the embodiment of existence, knowledge, bliss. As their husband and tried to bring about the union between Radha and Krishna in order to make the latter happy, inasmuch as he, they saw, felt most happy when united with her. Again we see that although Rupa, Sanatana, Jiva and the early Vaishnava teachers spent their lives at Vrindavan in the service of different images of Krishna, they did not try to install an image of Radha by the side of Krishna. It is inferred from this fact that they did not do so only because they considered themselves to be in the position of Radha. So all the great acharyas, so they thought that all cannot attain to the state of Radha, but in practice they grant that one can attain to the position of Radha through this practice of Madhura Bhava. So one of the examples he is giving is these great acharyas, they established many temples in Vrindavan, but in that temple only Krishna is there. There is no Radha. Then without Radha, Krishna, how can it be there? Without Radha, so Shakti and Shiva will always be together. Like that, Krishna and Radha must always be together, especially in Vrindavan. So the explanation is, all of the sadhakas, they are the Radhas. So Krishna is having Radha in all the sadhakas, including those Vaishnava teachers. That is the reason why Radha is not there with Krishna. So that means everyone who follows this Madhura Bhava can attain to the state of Radha, who was the Shakti herself, that is beyond man and woman. It is the Shakti that gives birth to all the man, woman, everything, all the creation. So she is beyond that. So one goes beyond the genders. at that time. Those who want to study in detail the Madhura Bhava spoken of in the Vaishnava books should go through the writings of the early Vaishnava teachers like Rupa, Sanatana and Jiva, and also the poems of Vaishnava poets like Vidyapati and Chandidas on Purvaraga, the dawning of the divine love, Dana, offering of or dedication, Mana, the affected rejection of the beloved's endearment due to excess of emotion, Abhimana, the wounded feeling of love, and Madhura, pangs of separation. We have discussed the essentials of the Madhura Bhava here because it will make it easy to understand that what wonderful zenith of excellence the master reached in the practice of that mood. So Madhura Bhava was explained here so that we can follow and understand the meaning of all the sadhanas that Sri Ramakrishna is going to follow. So we come to chapter 14, the master sadhana of the Madhura Bhava. The master was accustomed to remaining absorbed in any mood whatsoever it rose in his pure and one-pointed mind. That mood fully occupied his mind for the time being and wiped off all other moods and converted his body into a perfect instrument suitable for its manifestation. So he assumed any one bhava, Shanta, Dasya, Sakhya, Vatsalya or Madhura. The whole mind would be given to that one bhava. He would not dwell for half an hour on this one, half an hour on that one. His mind would not do like that. He would hold on to one bhava for a time being until he realized the highest in that bhava. So that was the nature of master's mind. When we study his life, we get acquainted with this nature of mind since his childhood. We observed the nature of it almost daily when we were visiting Dakshineshwar. Even when he had finished all his sadhana, he had become a world teacher. Even then, the traits he had developed in his young age were there to be seen in his life. The author says, while he was merging in any particular spiritual mood, as the result of his listening to music or for some other reason, he felt in his mind extreme pain if anyone sang or talked of any other mood. So if he were in one mood, if somebody talked or discussed some other mood, suppose he is in Dasya, then if somebody talks about Vatsalya, he would not relish because he has to get into that mood to enjoy it. Therefore, he would not relish it at all. Please don't bring that Vatsalya now. Think about Dasya. I am in the Dasya mood. So he would demand also. He experienced that or talked of any other mood. He experienced that pain because it is needless to say the course of the modifications of his mind directed towards one point was suddenly checked. Patanjali, the great thinker, has called that state of the mind Savikalpa Samadhi. So if somebody is in Savikalpa Samadhi, his mind is concentrated on one mood, in which there is only one particular current of modification round one object. The same has been described as Bhava Samadhi in devotional scriptures. What Patanjali calls as Savikalpa Samadhi, the Vaishnava scriptures call it as Bhava Samadhi. About Sri Ramakrishna himself, many people said he is in Bhava Samadhi of Shiva. That means his whole mind is filled with the thoughts of Shiva. He is in Bhava Samadhi of Divine Mother. All the divine qualities of the Mother, her contemplation on her form is there in the mind. No other, none of Shiva or Krishna is there, only of Mother is there. So it's a Bhava Samadhi. Bhava Samadhi and Nirvikalpa Samadhi and Savikalpa Samadhi are the same, according to the author. This shows that the master's mind was accustomed to merging in that kind of ecstasy from his childhood. That is the nature of Sri Ramakrishna's mind, to be holding on to one mood until he himself desires to go to some other mood. Moods cannot commercially disturb him. He goes into moods according to his wish. So when he is holding on to one mood, he would not relish the other moods. The above mentioned characteristic of his mind took an extraordinarily new turn from the time he commenced his spiritual practices. For whereas before his mind was found to remain in the mood only for a short time and then to change into another, now once inducted into one mood, it always dwelt in it till it experienced its ultimate limit, getting at last a glimpse of the non-dual consciousness beyond. So from any mood, he would not stop in between until he reached the non-dual mood. That is the ultimate. So from the beginning to the end, you would cling on to one mood. Then only you will go to the another mood. He will not just stay for one mood for half an hour, come out to the another mood. At least during the sadhana. His mind has got that nature of going in one line and reach the summit. Afterwards only start the second summit climb. As examples of this act, it may be said that until he reached the furthest limit of the Dasya mood, he did not try to practice the apatya, looking upon God as a parent again. So again, he did not engage himself in the practice of Vatsalya and the Madhura Bhava before he had final experience of the apatya, as taught by the Tantras. Instances of this can be easily multiplied if you study the events of the time of his sadhana. So the author gives two examples. Sri Ramakrishna was practicing the apatya bhava. Apatya means the child, thinking that God as his child, he himself as mother, or he is as a child and God as the mother. In both ways it's called apatya bhava. It is the mood of a child and mother. So when he was there, he was practicing the Rama, the Balaka Rama, the child Rama, he was immersed in that one. He never thought about Kali, he never thought about any other deity. Only Rama as a child, Ram Lala. Always meditating on Ram Lala, Ram Lala. Similarly, in the other bhavas also, Dasya Bhava, he practiced Dasya Bhava. That is the attitude of Hanuman. So he thought himself as Hanuman with the ideal of the Dasya Bhava. Sri Ramakrishna held on to this Bhava so doggedly until he realized and saw Hanuman's figure, Hanuman's vision. He would not stop. Only after realizing Hanuman, then he changed over to the Apatya Bhava. Then from Apatya to Shanta or to Vatsalya Bhava. Like that, one after finishing one, he would go to the another. So instances that can be easily multiplied. When the Brahmani came, the master's mind was filled with the contemplation of the motherhood of God. At that time, he saw the actual manifestation of the Divine Mother in all creatures, sentient and insentient, in the universe, especially in all female forms. Any female form, you would think it is Divine Mother herself. Therefore, we clearly understand that the reason why he addressed Brahmani as mother as soon as he saw her and fully believed himself to be her son. Sat at times on her lap and took food out of her hand. Inspired by the devotional mood of the gopis of Vraja, the Brahmani happened at times to sing songs conveying the idea of conjugal relationship, that Radha-Krishna relationship with God. When the master said, we are told by Hriday that he did not like that mood and requested her to stop them and sing instead songs expressive of the motherhood of God. So it's an example that when he was in one mood, he could not relish the other mood. When Brahmani, he thought of her as mother and himself as a child. So he was filled with the mood of mother-child relationship, Vatsalya Bhava. At that time, the Brahmani could not understand his mood. So she wanted to sing some Radha-Krishna mood. So he said, no, I don't like it. Don't sing Radha-Krishna mood now, only Vatsalya mood. The mother-child mood you sing. So that means he wants only one mood until that is given up by him after reaching the zenith, then only he would come to the other mood. The Brahmani rightly understood the master's mood and started immediately singing songs indicative of the mood of the female attendant of the mother of the universe, Dasi. Like God's Dasi, servant maid of goddess, she used to sing in that mood. And master would enjoy it. Or she introduced songs full of outburst of affection of Yashoda for her Gopala. That is also Vatsalya Bhava. These are, of course, events that occurred long before he became engaged in the discipline of the Madhura Bhava. So it is evident that this was a transparent sincerity, absolutely unalloyed. As he himself used to say, there is no swindling in the abode of my mind. So he used to be very sincere. He used to clearly know, this is what I know, what I want, this is what I don't want. Anyway, we have seen how the master's mind changed and how he came forward to practice the spiritual mood of the maternal affection for God. Now, therefore, let us begin to describe the practices he undertook when he engaged himself in the discipline of the Madhura Bhava. So the author wants to go deep into the practice of Madhura Bhava by the master. No sadhana of the master was unscriptural. Although the master was almost wholly and illiterate, as that word is ordinarily understood, a study of his life reveals how he maintained the authority of the scriptures all his life. The scriptures means here the record of spiritual experiences of the previous sadhakas, the previous aspirants. That is recorded. We call it as scriptures. Scriptures means it is all spiritual experiences of sages and seers, rishis and munis. So what was their experience? Spiritual experience. They were mainly spiritual people. So about spirituality, each one had his own realization, and that he would express to his students. They would record it. When they were all put together, that becomes a scripture, because all of them are concerning spirituality and experienced by the rishis and munis. The methods he undertook through the pure impulse of his heart, even before he was initiated by any spiritual teacher, were all in accordance with the scriptures and never contradicted them. So it is such a strange thing. Though he did not consult the scriptures, but he never went against scriptures, because it is all, after all, a truth. A truth, whether you know it as a truth or not, you can follow a truth. See, we don't tell lies. We always tell what is happening as it is, usual. Unless we are pressurized or we are put into some fear. Otherwise, people to say what they think and they do what they say. So truthfulness is there in us. That is the natural course. Some extraneous circumstances makes us go out of this rule. So here he never contradicted the statements of the scriptures. Sri Ramakrishna, whatever he did, even without knowing the scriptures, was always inside the teachings of the scriptures. Because it is a truth that has been recorded in the scripture. He never went away from truth. He never gave up truth on any account. When he is holding on to truth, and it is truth that is there in the scriptures, they always tallied. They never contradicted. This was one thing we can notice the author says in the life of Sri Ramakrishna. These events of his life prove the fact that this will happen to all who are eager to realize God with a pure and holy heart, where there is no swindling. So if you are sincere in your efforts in your spiritual life, you are sure to reach the fruitfulness. You are sure to derive the benefit of success. But sincerity is the main thing. There should be no theft in the inside the mind. There is no swindling inside the mind. That means don't deceive yourself first and then deceive others. We always, when we try to deceive others, first we deceive ourselves, that we are able to deceive others. You may not get deceived at all. You may find out your deceit. So, but we always first think, no, they will believe what I say. That means you are deceiving yourself first. Afterwards, you go to deceive others. Sri Ramakrishna said, such things cannot happen in spiritual life. If that happens, that life is no spiritual life. It is an ordinary, mundane life. So we shall see many other great experiences of Sri Ramakrishna in our next discourse. Next discourse, we will discuss many more points regarding this Madhura Bhava and Sri Ramakrishna's this attitude of reaching to the highest in a single bhava before changing to the next bhava has been very well explained here. So in this Madhura Bhava also, he will hold on to that one until he reaches the highest. That is the Radha Krishna Milana, the union of spiritual union of Radha and Krishna. Afterwards only he will go to the Advaitic sadhana. So we will see that one in our future reading. Niranjanam nityamanantarupam bhaktanukampatrita vigraham vai Ishavataram parameshamidyam tam Ramakrishnam shirasa namama. O Ramakrishna, the taintless one, the eternal one, the one with infinite forms, the one who has assumed form for the sake of devotees, the incarnate Supreme Soul and the adorable Lord of all, we salute you, bowing our heads. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti.